Hello and welcome to the Parousia Podcast. I'm Charbel, your host, and we are back in the studio at Voice of Charity. During the lockdown, God has not left us. He's actually allowed this means to reach more people. So in the last 3 months, we've reached more people than we've reached in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
We've worked out that from the sheer number of people.
That's amazing, isn't it?
So it's been amazing.
Very providential.
Yes.
God turns all things unto good.
Yeah.
For those who love him.
So remember, we had a little teaser, a half-hour show with you on the EWTN platform, and that was the My Encounter series, which has been amazing, and that's all over the world, that one. And but we didn't really go into detail. There's one aspect we're going to do today.
Yeah, it was very brief, wasn't it?
That's right. It's just enough to see your quick spiritual journey, but
skimming the surface.
That's right.
Literally.
But those who don't know, I mean, Salwa is very, very busy in the church, and I encourage you to listen to that show. That's called the My Encounter series, and if you go on our YouTube channel or even our podcast page or even on the EWTN Asia Pacific page, you will see that show. And just a quick update of where she's come from, born and raised Catholic, and married with children, and also very heavily involved. You're working in Parousia, still are, part of the Maronite Eparchy and leading the Maronite Professionals Forum.
Australian Maronite Professionals Council.
Isn't that amazing? And that's growing, right? It's,
yes, thank God. The AMPC is doing okay.
Working very close with the Maronite Bishop. And then, of course, we won't forget your involvement with, the
EWTN
different
and
EWTN media.
Oh, no, there's a lot. Don't worry about it. It's a long list.
Spiritual retreats.
Above all, my vocation is mother, wife, and daughter of God the Father.
That's it. Beautiful.
I've got to remember
that. Now, this is a topic we're going to talk about. We've never spoken about this before. There's a beautiful image behind us you can see of Jesus.
That's amazing, that
baby.
image. I'm mesmerised by that picture.
It's a beautiful image.
It just, it says it all. I'm lost for words. Looking at that picture, it says everything that a mother wants to see, wants to know, and wants to believe, that hope. Miscarriage is a very touchy subject.
I might lead in, and I'll say, my mother had 4 miscarriages. I know that she lost twins before I was born, so there was a boy and a girl, twins. She talks about that. So, she's 6 boys, one of 6 boys, but she's had 10 pregnancies, and so there would have been 10 children if you think about that. And there are 10 children. I mean, there's 4 in heaven, as we say. But I hear stories, and I know you've mentioned it once or twice in the past, just in passing, and we're going to dive in today. But I didn't realise the impact of it really until we lost our first child, Christine and I. So we have 7 beautiful children, or really 8, because we had a miscarriage this year. It was in April. I actually launched the book, remember the book, and at the launch I announced pregnant with number 8, please pray. And it was within weeks then Christine lost the baby. She was 15 weeks. And so everyone talks about that 13-week mark. You get to 13 weeks, you hit your third, you finish that first trimester and you pass the safe zone. Well, there's no zone there.
No.
So whether you wait, a lot of people don't mention that they're pregnant until they're 12 weeks or 13 weeks to be safe.
Yeah.
Look, I say to that, as soon as you find out, the idea is let people know so they can pray, because you cannot guarantee whatever's going to happen. So we ask people to pray.
Yeah.
And of course, it's up to God if He destines for that child to go to full term or not, and God's will be done. But that whole experience, really, I remember the day clearly. I remember it was very graphic, lots of blood and just emotion, and we went to the hospital, and then the hardest thing is when the realization there was no way that this baby was going to survive, and the news was pretty evident. Okay, it's confirmed, we've lost the child, and I remember seeing, an arm, an elbow, and lots of they call it tissue.
Real. It makes the baby
and you
real.
Just think, this child is a child, and look, it's very emotional. And I remember it shook me to my core that day as a father. But then, that whole day was all about Christine and carrying with her, and she was very emotional. And I realized, wow, this is hard. This is not easy. But our faith teaches us that, okay, this child, through no fault of its own, died innocent, and therefore it's not going to hell, obviously.
No.
So it's going to be in a better place.
Yeah,
and so our faith teaches, through baptism of desire, this child would be in heaven. And so it's not suffering right now. And that's it. So it's almost the faith that we possess would remind us, okay, if our goal is to get these children to heaven, well, the consolation is, okay, one down.
Well, before Pope Benedict, Emeritus, we had the teaching of limbo.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
As a mother, I didn't know where my babies went. We didn't have even the confirmation that you just stated, that by baptism of desire our children are in heaven. See, we didn't know that back in the 60s and 70s and 80s. We didn't know that. We were just told that the church doesn't know, and that there is a place called limbo. But Pope Emeritus clarified that, saying, no, they go to heaven. Thank God.
That's right. And so, look, from a father's perspective, I know it was tough, and initially I was more concerned about my wife and her health, but it's been a few months now, and thank God, to heal. What we did was we had the remains of the baby collected once they investigated what happened, and then we buried the remains in the backyard under a rose bush. Now, we're not required to do that, but just something we wanted to do. Got a blessing from a priest, and we got a candle.
Closure. Yeah, that's closure.
And
it's
it just
healing.
helped us heal.
Oh, absolutely. And you named your baby?
Yeah, so Teresa Dominique, and we believe it most likely a girl. Just the strong feeling. We don't know for sure, but that's why we had two names.
Yeah.
So it's Teresa or Dominic.
Yeah.
We invoke those saints every day, and the kids are reminded of that as well. Beautiful. There's a candle there, and we'll remember that day. And it's actually the Feast of the Annunciation, March 25th. We'll remember Teresa Dominic.
Beautiful.
Now, that's our experience. And it wasn't, soon after that, I got a message from someone who said, how do we help people deal with it? Then we had a marriage summit, and then it was, one of the talks was about dealing with miscarriage. Then all of a sudden, we talked, you and I, and
because you triggered a lot of emotions. Your miscarriage triggered my emotions.
and what people may not realise, but you've had 5.
Yeah, like
5.
your mum, I've had 10 pregnancies.
10 pregnancies.
So I have 10 babies.
So can we start there? And where do we begin? You have when you experience your first one. Can we start there?
Yes.
You raised a Catholic, very pro-life. You wanted this child.
17th of April, 1984.
You remember the date?
I don't know how I remembered it. I remembered it after your miscarriage.
Wow.
Yeah, I remembered it. It just... because it's something that you block out. So, of course, miscarriages in my day, I'm talking about the 80s, was not spoken about. It was just like another monthly cycle. That's how it was treated. So to speak about it is just over the top. You just don't do that. You're being fanatical, or, get over it. Everyone had that attitude. So, and not knowing, as I said, where babies go, mothers like me were just made silent. So we couldn't express our grief. I couldn't express my grief, and that's why I never recalled the dates. And I still don't remember the dates of my miscarriages. I've sort of buried them. So it's suppressed grief, which is not good, which is what I'm dealing with now at my age, in the form of PTSD, post-traumatic stress. Which is a very common disorder that people don't talk about. And miscarriage is part of that problem. So when I lost my first baby, it was in a car accident.
How many weeks were you?
They said that I was about 9 weeks.
9 weeks, okay.
Yeah. And then it was traumatic. But the worst trauma was that I wasn't allowed to grieve about it. I was in hospital for the day, and you can't cry. Why are you crying? It's just a blob. What are you crying for? That was the attitude I received, and that made me feel even worse. So there was this self-shaming, really, like, Salwa, why are you crying? Why are you acting like a baby? You know, get over it. It's no big deal. So you convince yourself as a woman that what you're feeling, you shouldn't be feeling. And then again, like I said, suppressed grief and suppressed anger. And then, it just goes on.
It's common, isn't it?
It goes on.
How many of us in today's culture, it is a blob of tissue. It is considered. And what people fail to realise, just a bit of logic tells us, if you want the child, then it's a child. The moment you don't want the child, then it switches automatically into this blob of tissue.
Yeah.
So how does that work?
I know, but, the pro-life movement has brought it to our attention that your baby is a baby from the moment of conception. It's a life.
Whether we want it or not.
It doesn't, it makes no difference. Like, that's my baby and I'm attached to that. And I think it was Father Mike Schmitz, was it, that said that a mother's cells and a baby's cells are connected and they never disappear. The baby's cells, once the baby is born or delivered, the cells remain in the mother's body.
Father Calloway talks
Father
about this.
Calloway, was it? Yeah, I was one of them.
The image of Our Lady being pregnant with Jesus.
Yeah.
And so then Jesus actually has in him the cells are from Mary. And so forever, for eternity.
That's right.
He has Mary as part of him.
Well, I wrote that in my article.
Yes, which is out, it will be out. It's like those watching live, it's not out yet. It'll be out in a few days. But those who are watching this, it should be on the Parousia Narrow Gate series.
So miscarriage was very painful because you don't have anyone to talk to. Like, I really admire and respect you, Charbel, and any father like yourself who has stood by his wife, because that is really important. A woman needs to know that she's not alone, that she did just have a baby, that her pain isn't worthless or unimportant. It needs to be recognised and stated and acknowledged. You're in pain and you're grieving, and I understand, and I'm with you, and I am grieving with you, and I support you, because everyone needs that support. But unfortunately, I didn't get that support, so I was just thrown out on a limb, pretty much, or under the bus, as they say, thrown under the bus.
That's right.
Yeah, I was thrown under the bus. So that was only the first miscarriage, and then the second one, when I had the miscarriage, I went into the hospital and they were going to have the usual curette, and they had a scan and there was another heartbeat, so it was one of twins that I lost.
Wow. How long after?
Thankfully, about maybe 6 months or...
soon after.
Yeah, soon after. It was at the end of 84. Yeah, end of 84, because then my daughter was born in 85, the surviving twin. So they assumed that the lost twin was a boy, because they say, the doctors at that time said to me, usually the male child is more fragile than the female.
Wow.
So if it was twins, they just assume it was the male twin that was lost. And then that was, again, traumatic, and I think that's what's caused my postnatal depression with my first child. I shouldn't say my first child, but see, I'm accustomed to saying that.
Yes.
She was literally my third.
Yeah.
So anyway, so with I had postnatal depression, which wasn't diagnosed. I just know now from in hindsight
all these years later,
that's what it was. When I would find myself sitting alone in our apartment, just on the floor, crying, just sitting in a corner. I remember it was horrific. This poor little girl, that's what I was, a little girl, sitting in the corner of her house and just crying, not knowing what to do with myself. Yeah, I had no
one
support.
to talk to.
No support. And then a very, very dear friend of mine, God bless her, Melanie, she's still my best friend, she popped in on me one day and saw me. And she encouraged me to get up, put the baby in a pram, and to go outside and just walk. She said, just go out, walk. And every day she would push me to do that. And so I just started to recover myself and just get up and go, get up and walk, get up and do things. But these days, thankfully, there is help for postnatal depression. It's more recognised. I don't think people realise that a woman who's had a miscarriage can also go through postnatal depression because she's just had a baby. But like I said, it wasn't recognised as a baby.
And that's
Therefore,
why
there's no such thing as postnatal. Yeah, there's no postnatal care. There's no postnatal anything because there was no natal. Isn't that sad? It's just totally wiped out as if it didn't happen. It didn't happen. And that's part of the trauma.
This is widespread worldwide. I mean, this is what has been the norm,
yes.
Unfortunately.
Lack of understanding.
Yeah, miscarriages are just, whatever, move on.
That's right.
Don't think about it.
Yeah, and I mean, the sad thing is that if you look up the word abortion, not abortion, miscarriage, abortion comes up. It's called, what's it called? Spontaneous abortion. Like the body aborts a baby because there's something wrong. So the body is discharging or removing something that is imperfect in your body. So that's what abortion was recognised as. So if you had, not abortion, I keep saying abortion with miscarriage.
No.
But you see, they're the same thing in medical terms. A miscarriage is simply a natural abortion where the baby is aborted by the body, isn't that sad?
Yeah.
But that's how the body works. So there was obviously something wrong with the child that is miscarried, or there's been a trauma like a car accident. My first one was a car accident. So if there's a trauma, you lose the child. If there's stress, if there's abuse, whether it's physical abuse or mental abuse, that triggers also miscarriages a lot of the time.
Is any of that, I know there's typically an interview that takes place at childbirth. So a midwife will ask, or whoever it is, a psychologist or someone would ask the mother who's given birth certain questions. They wanted to get to the bottom of, do you want this child? Is this child out of freedom? All these things. Is the father around, or is he abusive? So there's all these questions.
Do they ask these questions?
Yeah, well, these days they do, yeah.
You're joking.
So that, it's done just directly with the mother. And then there's this. Then of course they talk about contraception right away, and they talk about you don't have to. You've got options basically.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering with a miscarriage if they've ever go through the same process, or
In my days, I'm telling you, Charbs, they just left me. I would just. It was a day procedure. You'd go in for a curette. You come out and you go home. Nobody looks twice at you. You don't even get a meal. You're treated just like an outpatient, not even as an outpatient. These days they give you a cup of tea or something. They ask how you're feeling. They'll send in a social worker or someone, like you said, they might send in a social worker to make sure you're okay. No, there was none of that for me. And I'd had 5 miscarriages. And one of them was actually a delivery. It was a stillborn baby.
Wow.
At 20 weeks. But the doctor at Canterbury Hospital at the time saw me in a lot of stress. I was traumatised. I was in a very bad situation at home, a lot of emotional abuse. And that's what triggered this particular miscarriage. And so I found myself going to the hospital by myself. I just called an ambulance. I knew something was happening and I was in a lot of pain. So I went by myself into the emergency. I thought it might have just been a miscarriage like the others. And I found myself in labour. And the doctor said to me, we could write this off as 19 weeks so that you don't have to go through the drama of the red tape, the death certificate, the burial, the funeral, That's all he said to me. This was on the emergency table as I was just delivered a baby and I was traumatised. Like, really, I should have had a social worker and a psychologist with me because I was really traumatised at that time. And he said, do you want to know if it's a girl or a boy? And I didn't. I didn't want to know anything. I didn't know any. I wasn't in the right state. I wasn't in the right frame of mind, but help wasn't provided for me, and that's my greatest regret. My greatest regret is that I did not know, and I should have at least asked, is it a boy or a girl? But you know, I like yourself. It doesn't matter if my babies are boys or girls. I've given them names now, knowing that they're in God's hands anyway.
Yes.
So it doesn't matter if my baby was a girl or a boy. It was my baby, and that was the most traumatic for me. That one, I guess, going through labour and going through delivery makes it even more difficult. Having a stillborn as opposed to a 10-week or a 15-week miscarriage. I've had miscarriages at 12 weeks. I've had them at 9 weeks, 12 weeks, 15 weeks. Yeah. Not a good experience.
That wasn't the last one? So there was another one after?
Yes, there was. See, I can't... I'm actually having therapy. I'm 60 years old now. Going through menopause, and all these memories are being triggered, and I'm having therapy for post-traumatic stress disorder. It's something you've had to deal with for all your life, and so I can't even talk about it without crying, because it doesn't go away.
That's okay.
And that picture says it all.
And our Lord is carrying.
Yeah, Christine said something so powerful that I've put in my blog article. She said that one woman was recorded as saying that when she dies, she can imagine that all her miscarried babies are standing in line, like welcoming her into heaven. And I thought, that is the most beautiful picture any mother could have. Most beautiful image. And that picture there of Jesus carrying that baby.
Yes.
That is so soothing to a mother who's had a miscarriage, let alone 5.
They're in the arms of Jesus right now.
So I have an army of saints. And that's how I look at it now. I have an army of saints in heaven.
Yes.
And that's probably why I can do the things that I do, and the faith that I've been able to hold on to is a fruit of the hope that I have. You know, when you want to cling to something because you don't want to lose it, like you hope, and I hope that it's true. Our children are in heaven and waiting for us. That's our hope, and from that stems our great faith. Yes, that is what's going to happen. Yes, they are in the arms of Jesus, Mary and Joseph and all the saints, and they're playing with them in heaven and they're waiting for us. So this is the hope and the faith that we cling to, and it should make us appreciate even more life, which it has for me. For me, I mean, you ask my kids or anyone, I mean, there's a reason why they call me Mama Salwa, because I'm everybody's mum. I just want to be a mother, and I feel like God has consoled my grief by giving me even more children, my spiritual children, and the love of my own children. And I appreciate that my husband can never understand, because he wasn't brought up in that culture. You know, like you, Charbel, and the young generation, you're given some kind of formation or understanding in school. You know, my husband grew up in the Middle East with lack of education. He wasn't educated, and so he doesn't have that understanding or that compassion, unfortunately. But yeah, that's another story.
Very good point. Thank you. It is very true. The culture, and many of us have tried to make up reasons what's happened, and let's go through a few misconceptions, because You know, my grandmother, I know even as well, growing up, the idea of lifting heavy objects, or there's a lot of people would pinpoint, okay, I lost the baby because I lifted too much shopping, or they pinpoint it to an actual scenario, and then that must be the way they've dealt with it. But as we go through them, some of these are misconceptions where it's not necessarily from lifting heavy things that causes miscarriage.
No, not necessarily.
Because if you think about how much you lift throughout a 9-month pregnancy, and how much you go through, how much, and that's why men, when they take note and they can witness a pregnancy, a 9-month pregnancy, and then the delivery, we know that women are a lot stronger than men to go through something like that. But so that's one misconception. And I guess if we take that away, then there's a scenario, and I can't help think most women or mothers unfortunately would blame themselves. They start to go through a litany of things. What did I do wrong? Did I do this wrong? Did this wrong? Did this wrong? Did this wrong? When, that you could spend the rest of your life blaming yourself.
Yep.
What would you say to those women right now? And there would be thousands of them around the world who are just blaming themselves or wondering, what did I do wrong?
Yeah, we do. We blame ourselves because we're the mother. Yeah. This is my baby. And so I've done something wrong that's caused this baby to be miscarried. So what have I done wrong? And that's where the self-shaming comes in. And it's a way of justifying what just happened. But let me tell you, all you did was bring life to that child. You've actually done nothing wrong. You've gained a soul for heaven. Think of it that way. Always think of it that way. You've gained a soul for heaven. You haven't done anything wrong to damage or hurt your baby. God has a plan in everything, and we were saying before that God turns all things unto good for those who love him. So maybe there's something in your body that needs attention. Maybe there's a problem in the body that could be medical, that could require attention, and maybe it's just to strengthen you, to make you want even more to have a baby. Because I know it did with me. Losing a baby in miscarriage only made me want to have a baby all the more. Mm-hmm. And that's probably one of the reasons why I've always been pro-life, always been against contraception. Even when, as a young married woman, I was expected to go on contraception for some reason. I don't know why, but I just refused it. Something in me was intrinsically pro-life. It was just a natural thing. I don't know why back in those days, Charbel. A lot of the Lebanese used to think it was okay. Catholics, good, well-meaning, practicing Catholics, they didn't know how wrong it was. They didn't know about contraception, how it was just an abortive method, really.
The lack of education out there, and it is a society that's pushing it as well.
Yes.
And just assuming right away that all mothers are just, that's it, that they don't want children anymore at all, zero, or one, maximum 2.
Yeah,
and
controlling,
that's it. And then and you have one boy, one girl, you've got the set, you're done.
Yeah, it's like going to a shop and ordering online, select what you want. But to those mums who think that you've done something wrong and you've brought on that miscarriage, no. Don't let people bring you to that shaming. Like I had that said to me, what did you do?
Straight away.
What did you do? What do you mean, what did I do?
That's not fair, yeah.
No, I didn't kill my baby. I didn't cause this miscarriage. My body would have been weak. My body was already traumatized under emotional stress. But not all women that have miscarriages, like Christine, for example, are victims of abuse, right? No. It could just be God's way of reminding us. That's all. I don't see it as a bad thing anymore. Yeah. Now I see miscarriage in a different light. God is saving my children without the hard work. I mean, what are we doing as parents, Charbel? What's our goal? To send
Ultimate
them to
goal,
heaven.
absolutely.
To help make sure our kids get to heaven. And now I see that God did me a favor. He's actually made sure that I have 5 in heaven.
That's a beautiful point, and maybe, look, I mean, the major point is there are more miscarriages than we can contemplate. Is it 1 in 4 pregnancies, something like that?
Yeah, that's right. It's very high.
Where it's ended miscarriage. Now, there are for most of them, there's no medical reasons. There's no medical reasons for most of them. So it's very hard. And again, another reason not to blame the mother.
Yeah.
But how do we find peace? Women who are still maybe even buried this and not thought twice, or those who have maybe even, like you, for all their life have just sort of hidden it.
Carried it, yeah.
And now they're just thinking about it. Every time
Yes.
they think about it, they tried, maybe that date comes around each year and it's like, oh,
Yes.
I remember that time.
Yes.
How do we help these women find peace? And you've touched on it, that the idea of them
Through
are in
prayer,
heaven. And
yeah.
this
Through
place.
through prayer and through our faith, knowing that they are with Jesus. Get a copy of that picture. You should
That's
distribute
beautiful.
that.
Great choice, Jess.
You should distribute that. Imagine that picture. Put that in your mind and keep it there permanently. Jesus embracing your child or your children. I'm not going to lie to you and say that you will ever find that ultimate peace and you will not cry again and you will not grieve again, because it's not true. I continuously grieve.
Yes.
Even when I speak about my babies, I still cry after all these years, because they're real to me. And I made them real because someone said to me only recently, name your children. They're baptized by desire, so therefore I know they're baptized because I want them to be. So now name them. So I did. I named them. And so now I can write about them. I can talk to them. I can actually pray for each one of them individually. And I find myself smiling.
It's beautiful.
And to me, that's the best kind of peace of mind and peace of heart that I have found through my faith. And just remembering them in prayer and talking about them and to them as real people, not as just a blob that I passed.
These are your children.
These are my babies. Yeah, and I have an army of crusaders praying for me. Go, Mum, go, Mum.
I love that.
Mama Salwa.
That's beautiful.
See, that's the peace. See the joy. See how God does that? He'll allow you to cry and grieve, and then in a split second, he'll put that joy in your heart, and you just, no words. God is so good. He really is. There's a reason for everything.
That's a beautiful quote, Jess. The best and most beautiful things in the world cannot be seen nor touched, but are felt in the heart.
Amen.
And image of Our Lady, those listening, an image of Our Lady with a love heart around her womb.
Yeah. And Helen Keller was blind. She's amazing, Helen Keller.
Wow.
Australian.
Wow.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You don't have to see. Like you were blessed, Charbel, to see your baby and to be able to bury your baby. That is very healing. I wish I could have done that. I wish I knew then what I know now. And a lot of women my age and that grew up in my era would probably be saying the same thing. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But that's where my great grief and trauma comes from, thinking, what did they do with my baby? And I don't want to go there. I don't want to think about that. But that's the reality, unfortunately. What did they do with my baby?
And look, as you say, it is out of your hands. We leave it up to God now. Yeah. And what's beautiful about our faith is, remember, time is passing and there's always something to look forward to. And we will be able to be reunited one day if our strive and that image of your children to be able to welcome you one day.
Yeah.
Them praying for you right now, helping you on the journey. Come on, Mum, keep going, don't stop. You know? That's just. I remember the graphic imagery of seeing the child, but then and then the realization how precious life is.
Yes.
So like a light switch. I'll never take for granted my life and never take for granted any of my children's life. And I thank God.
Exactly.
When people say, how many children do you want? The classic question. we shouldn't put a number to it.
Yeah.
In fact, we don't deserve any. We don't deserve one. And I can't stress that enough. If you are blessed with one child, you are eternally blessed.
Yep.
If you are blessed with 2 children, I mean, just thanks be to God.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how many children you have. It's not about... Some women have spent their whole life, and I pray for them, they cannot fall pregnant. And so this is very difficult as well for couples who are trying to fall pregnant and cannot. And how many do we know now?
That's right.
And on the flip side, you've got so many women who are falling pregnant but don't want the baby. And we've got this huge number that should never be happening. The high rates of abortion, it's just so sad.
Ridiculous.
And that's normal. And so we have all this, and it's all under one word. It's the medical procedure. And that can hide all of the imagery, all the graphics, and that's our way of just moving on. But we're not really dealing with it. And women don't talk about it, but when a topic like this does come, and that's why this is a unique opportunity here, we haven't done this, and it is quite emotional, it's difficult, but we felt a need that we need to at least put it on the table. Let's talk about this, flesh this out.
I agree.
We talk about abortion, we talk about even contraception, we talk about marriage, we talk about all these things, but the idea of a miscarriage and what you go through, we very, very rarely talk about. I don't think I've seen it out there.
We don't. That's why there's so much post-traumatic stress with women who have had miscarriages, because it's not spoken about. What
should these women do? Should you recommend those watching now? Do they talk to who? Do they talk to? Talk to the father. Talk to the husbands if they can.
If they have a husband like you that would be understanding, and they could talk to, by all means, please do. If you have girlfriends that have been through it, talk to them. If you want, you can talk to me. It's taken me a long time to admit that I need help. My prayer life has made me so resilient that I haven't felt the need. But as I said, I went through menopause, and that has its own emotional turbulence attached to it, and a lot of triggering. So memories are brought up, and past traumas are brought up, and I realised that as strong as my faith is, God himself is leading me on the path of opening up and speaking about it, sharing my traumas with someone who will listen. And so when I told my doctor, straight away he put me onto a therapist who I've been discussing and talking with for the last 6 months, which has helped me to open up more. Otherwise I wouldn't have been sitting here talking to you about this. Yeah. It would have still stayed in me and continued to make me unhealthy. And that's the other thing, Charbel. Those kind of traumas aren't just things that happen and they're gone. They stay in your body. I mean, my body has been through so much over the years. There isn't an illness I don't have. I mean, I don't have AIDS, actually.
But you're not
so many things wrong with my body because of my mental state. And the mental state is a result of the traumas that I've been through that have been silenced, not spoken about. Yes, and miscarriage is one of them.
Isn't it interesting that the mental game? We're discovering more and more now how much of an impact it can have on the physical body. So your mental state impacts your physical state.
Yes.
So stress can cause damage.
A lot of damage.
And it's leading to death. It's leading to people in all sorts of scenarios. And depression and anxiety are higher than they've ever been, or as much as we can measure it now.
Yeah, a lot of stress.
There is a comment here, and I just Silvana, I don't know if you know her, but she's said a beautiful comment here. But she's asking advice, and thank you for your comment, Silvana, and question. She would like to ask advice to people who want to support women who've had miscarriage. What advice would you give to people like that? I'm assuming maybe Silvana's one of those, but women who want to help others who've gone through miscarriage, where could they start? Thank you for the question.
Start with your doctor. Okay. Church groups. I would like the church to recognise women that have had miscarriages and to provide help for them, like say in Maronite care, in our Maronite eparchy. We do have help there. We do have family counselling and people that you can talk to. if you don't have friends that you can talk to, thankfully I do have friends now. I understand I can talk to my friends. But if you don't have anyone or you can't trust anyone, go to a therapist. Go to a place like Catholic Care, places that provide family counselling. Don't be scared. Don't be ashamed. This is the problem. It's shame. See, me as a Lebanese woman, I'm ashamed to say I need help. I was ashamed. I'm not ashamed anymore. I was ashamed to say I need help to get through this. I was carrying everything on my own. I was building up all this suppressed grief and just confusion within me, and it was killing me physically. My body was so disabled in so many ways. I was having surgery after surgery for different things and just very unhealthy. Most of it was, I realise now, because of trauma. It is good to be able to talk to someone, and I am offering myself. I'm serious. If you want to talk to someone, call Jessie at the Voice of Charity. She'll give you my number. If we know we can talk to another woman who's been through it, it's so relieving. Like, I felt so relaxed being able to talk to Christine, your wife. And I'm telling you, Charbel, your unfortunate miscarriage was my fortune, because that was the trigger that made me realise I need to speak about this. I need to start talking and expressing my grief and my pain and my sorrow and acknowledging, yes, I've been through this, and yes, I need help. And I'm not alone. I know that. I know that now.
You have written an article on this as well.
Yeah, I started to write as a way of healing. And you're going to share that on the blog.
Absolutely.
In 2 parts, because it's very long.
Yes. But yeah, look
I
out
could write
for that.
so much more, but
And encourage people to
writing is my
read that.
outlet. And you said before, how do we find peace? Writing was another way.
Okay.
Prayer, the sacraments, definitely number one, the sacraments, and just going to confession. I mean, we haven't committed a sin. Miscarriage is not a sin by any means.
Thank you for clearing that up. And that's
Miscarriage is not
Exactly.
a sin. But we go to confession for our own personal healing. And I've been reading a lot of books on self-help. One of them was called How to Forgive Yourself and Others. And I realised from reading that book that I'm the one that needs to forgive me.
Yeah.
That's something that I want all these mothers that have had miscarriages to hear and to understand. Forgive yourself. Just say, I am sorry for not forgiving myself. I did nothing wrong and I'm still blaming myself for my miscarriage. I have to forgive myself. And only through confession did I learn to forgive myself. So please persevere in the sacraments and in prayer.